Sam Horn has signed with the Los Angeles Dodgers, but he is coming back to Mizzou anyway for this quarterback competition. How real is that competition? Let's talk about it on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And man, is it going to be a fun program today. I got to tell you, I'm in a great mood. Missouri about to start practice here as I record here in just about 30 minutes or so. I've got the Jordan Belfort polo going. Everything is coming up Millhouse. I got to say, you're in for a fun Locked On Mizzou today. Not only are we going to talk about that quarterback position, also what's the fallout if Sam Horn does win this job? I think that is a topic to attack from a bunch of different angles. And also, it's not just Missouri. High school recruiting has not been overwhelming in the 2026 cycle. But would you believe that Georgia and Alabama are signing an unprecedented amount of three-star high school football players as well? I think this is an interesting topic to delve even more deeply into. And also quickly, I can't forget today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances. With Monarch Money, use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. And as I said, Jim Callis reports from MLB.com, 17th round draft pick. This is important, by the way. Sam Horn signing with the Dodgers for just under $500,000. That is a much bigger number than I think really anybody else anticipated. Typically, your 17th round draft picks go for something a little bit less than $100,000, something in the $90,000 range, not $497,500. So just again, shy of $500,000 there. I was talking with my colleague Eric Kane over at Locked On Vols, and I'll just tell you, Eric follows not only the MLB draft, but college baseball much more closely than I do. And he expressed the same amount of surprise that I did. Well, the thing is, again, this is Jim Callis writing here. The Missouri pitcher Horn has first-round type of stuff with a fastball that touches 98 miles an hour, a mid-80s sweeper, but just 15 innings pitched in 3 seasons in college because of injuries. Also plays quarterback, and importantly for us Tiger fans, will return to Missouri to play football this fall. And Sam spoke a little bit with the media yesterday. Again, like I said on my previous show, let's not make too much out of Beau Pribula speaking to the media. As we saw, Wade Horn also spoke with the media yesterday as well. So Eli Drinkwitz making us realize that, yes, this is a real quarterback competition. And he also says specifically he's not opposed to letting said competition play out into the first game of the season. He has no timeline for making its decision on said starter. Now, you do have to wonder how much of that is coach speak, quite simply, because, there was some definite coach speak, I think, going on here when Drinkwitz adds that I don't think Matt Zollers, the true freshman from the state of Pennsylvania, as is Beau Pribula, I don't think Zollers is out of it just yet. He's going to have to really come on in the fall, but that's not unheard of. So Drinkwitz, again, even the third stringer there, the true freshman Matt Zollers, he says he's not out of the job either. And don't get me wrong, I think Zollers is a heck of a prospect. I think the odds of him starting in week 1 or 2 for Missouri, with barring any type of injury from the other two guys, I'd say is basically none. I'm not even going to say slim and none. I'm just going to tell you that's not going to happen. I'm sorry. Speaking of guys who are coming off injury, Zollers coming off an injury as well. His, I believe, dislocated ankle. Obviously a very different injury and a different recovery process than Sam Horn. Still, though, a true freshman. If there's one thing that we know about Eli Drinkwitz, he likes experience at the quarterback position. And neither Horn nor Beau Pribula have a ton of experience on the field. Obviously, both guys are veterans in terms of, well, especially Horn has been around this program for a long time. You would think after the last couple seasons, Horn would have had plenty of time to bury his face into the playbook as well. So to me, again, back to the original question here, how much of this is a real competition? Well, I think it is a real competition, but I do have to say I would still be pretty darn surprised if Beau Pribula does not win this job. Having said that, I don't want to be dismissive of Sam Horn at all, because you got to be impressed with the guy's stick-to-itiveness with football. And honestly, if I were him, I would try to probably keep my options open as well. But man, when the Dodgers obviously like you enough that in the 17th round, they're going to spend a decent chunk of their available money that they're able to spend in the draft on Sam Horn. Well, that just tells you how high the Los Angeles Dodgers, a pretty smart organization, by the way, not just an organization that has a ton of money, but a smart organization. If they think Horn has that type of upside, well, I'm sure he probably does. Why would I question the Dodgers and their ability to evaluate pitchers at this point? My point is, if I were Horn, I would be awfully tempted at this moment to maybe go on to the major leagues. But as Horn himself said yesterday, he just loves football and wants to keep playing, loves the team, loves Columbia, all that good stuff. And hey, to me, that makes Horn a really easy guy to root for, obviously. So I don't want to make it out to act like I'm rooting for Beau Pribula or Sam Horn for that matter. I'm simply rooting for whoever's going to be the best quarterback for Missouri. And I'll just tell you this, if Horn does win the job, there are going to be some people who say, well, gee, but Missouri really blew their resources there. $1.5 million reportedly that Pribula is going to make this season in NIL compensation, if you will. Well, obviously, in a perfect world, you wouldn't want to pay your backup quarterback. Again, this is a hypothetical scenario here. You wouldn't want to pay your backup quarterback that type of money. But in reality, there is no chance that with the situation that Missouri's in this season, that you could rely, again, back to Matt Zollers and Sam Horn, not only their obvious lack of experience, but their injury situations, Horn especially. How do you count on just Horn alone? Listen, I hope that everything that the Missouri reporters, especially Gabe DeArmond at Power Mizzou, are putting out there, that, hey, they're hearing that a lot of good things from the staff about Horn, and then he's right in this competition. Well, great. I hope that's great. I hope that's true, because that means that maybe Missouri maybe we're better at the quarterback position than I thought, and it's obviously, no matter who starts, it's better to have two than one. But like I was trying to get to before, while it would technically be not the greatest use of money if Pribula does not win the job, I just don't think, I don't think that Drinkwitz in the Missouri program had the luxury of simply sitting back in the transfer portal quarterback market and saying, we don't need to take another guy. I just think if Pribula ends up not winning that job, I think that's okay. I still think that's an okay use of resources, simply because the quarterback position is just that important, quite simply. Missouri and Drinkwitz could not afford to go into the season with just saying, well, hopefully Horn works out, and hopefully he does work out. I'll be happy for him if he does. Hopefully he's incredible this season. My point is, we don't need to then cry about, well, Missouri misevaluated the quarterback position or whatever it had on its roster. I think this is more of a risk management type of calculation than it is a quarterback evaluation calculation. That's more my point there, and I don't think it's something that I would criticize Missouri for whatsoever in the hypothetical scenario that Horn wins the job. And again, if you're listening to the people on the Missouri beat out there, that is a real possibility. And you know what? If you're feeling down about the Missouri high school recruiting class so far for 2026, well, it might make you feel better to know that this is looking like a very unusual season for a lot of reasons. I'll get into those in just a bit, but also specifically two of your biggest of blue blood programs, Alabama and Georgia, are taking more three-star high school players than ever. Let's delve into this topic a little bit more and what it might mean for Missouri in just a little bit. But have you ever wished that managing your money felt easier? Well, that's where Monarch Money comes in, because I'm just telling you, keeping track of all your different investments, LLCs, even if maybe your partner, or like me and my wife, and we keep different checking accounts. Hey, we don't need to micromanage all of our spending, but it is nice to be able to stay on the same page anyway and just know big picture where both of us stand without having to share logins and blah, 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 pester each other with all that different nonsense. Monarch Money is a complete financial center that lets you keep track of all these different accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Now, of course, as college football fans these days, it seems like there is just a never-ending amount of change in college football and in college basketball in particular. But you know what? In 2025, this offseason, I think in particular, has been a time of uncertainty and change for all of these programs across the country. And to that point, and it's not just this season, we're talking about, again, back to Missouri high school recruiting. Been a little underwhelming so far. Most outlets have Missouri 15th out of 16 teams in the conference for the 2026 high school class. But I'll tell you this, Alabama, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Alabama and Missouri don't have different classes, because Alabama has 4 5-star guys in this class. But also, I was listening to my colleague. I like listening to my colleagues, don't I? My colleague Jimmy Stein over at Locked On Bama was talking about revenue share. And again, this is my point. This is the first year of revenue share. And I'll tell you this, I know Missouri front-loaded a lot of NIL money for this coming roster for this season, trying to get out in front of the new revenue sharing restrictions, let's just say, and also, well, the NIL clearinghouse, which predictably, I predicted it here and in the SEC squad and other places that, well, the clearinghouse was probably going to lack a lot of teeth and actual enforcement mechanisms. And I think so far we're starting to maybe slowly but surely see programs are starting to realize this. But I think this offseason, a lot of programs like Missouri were maybe a little bit cautious, especially with this high school class. And again, back to Jimmy Stein at Locked On Bama, he was making the point that basically a class of all 5-star guys, he said hyperbolically, obviously nobody ever literally gets all 5-star guys. But, you know, certainly Alabama and Georgia in recent years have gotten more than 4 or 5 5-star guys in a class. But his point is there's a limit now with revenue sharing, at least as we knew the rules this past cycle. We can never make any guarantees going forward. But as we understood the rules this past cycle, if everybody's going to have $20.5 million to spend on all of their sports for all intents and purposes, well, then nobody's going to be able to just spend all of their money on the greatest high school class of all time. That's just simply not possible. So Bama, even though it has a very impressive 4 5-star guys in this class, has its highest percentage of 3-star guys in the 2020s. You go back to all the way to 2020, only 6 of Alabama's 25-man class was 3-star players. The next season, it was only 3 of 27. The next season, 2 players, then 4. That's not very many. Now, the next 3 seasons, though, it's been 9, 7, and 9. And that 9, by the way, in just a 21-man class, a fairly small class for Alabama so far. Similarly, Georgia this past season has a really large high school class with 30 guys committed so far. A full 14 of them, though. This does include a punter and a kicker, I'll give you that. So if you want to say 12, that's still a huge number for Georgia. That's a really large number of 3-star kids. Again, 12, you go all the way, not including the punter and the kicker, you go all the way back to 2020, 6 of Georgia's class. So half the number was 3-star kids. What does that tell you? Especially when Bill Belichick in North Carolina has 33 commitments so far in a high school class. That is a massive number considering, well, we're still quite a long ways till signing day here. That just tells me, I think, a lot of different programs are anticipating that maybe the money in the portal is going to dry up a little bit, but yet they're still anticipating, obviously, some of their guys are going to transfer out. Maybe the idea here is, hey, we need to start reloading the coffers with the high school class a little bit more, because not only am I seeing some fairly big numbers, just total numbers, I think, in this part of the cycle, but necessarily more 3-star guys in these bigger classes, especially for the Georgias and the Alabamas of the world as well. So if this sounds like I'm making a bunch of excuses for the Missouri high school class of 2026, I'm really not, because I'm just not sure what to make of any of this so far. I'm just trying to give you added context for everything. I do think this is going to be a bit of a transition type of high school class, trying to figure stuff out for most of the programs in the country. I think that's totally understandable because we're still very much new, really, into the portal NIL world environment, and now we're going into yet another environment of revenue sharing. Well, now we've got a salary cap here, for a de facto salary cap. Again, a lot to navigate here, and I'm just not willing to make a bunch of sweeping judgments based on just one cycle here. Let's see at least 2 or 3 play out before we start to panic about high school, and especially, again, as I've said before, let's look toward the 2026 portal class for Missouri. Let's see how it stacks up, because if that takes a big dip, that really, really probably is a big sign of a reason for panic. And yes, we're going to continue to be fairly quarterback heavy here on Locked On Mizzou. I've got Zach Sako on the docket here coming up. He's the host of Locked On Nittany Lions. So, of course, we're going to talk about Beau Pribula here this week. Get his perspective on his former backup quarterback and, well, kind of gadget quarterback, I would say, for the Nittany Lions as well. Also going to talk about Eli Drinkwitz coming up on the program today on his 5 requirements to play the position, and importantly, what one of his requirements is not, coming up on the program in just a minute. First, though, let's talk about Gametime, where when you're wanting last-minute tickets, I'm telling you, Gametime is the place to be. Not only is it the simplest place, but they have the best deals as well. For example, if at the last minute tonight you might be in the St. Louis area and want to see the Cardinals take on the Marlins tonight, how about right behind home plate? Well, I shouldn't say directly like first row, but behind home plate, section 150, row 23. How does $35 a ticket sound, including fees, by the way? That's the beautiful thing about Gametime. They always give you the fees included right up front. So take the guesswork out of buying baseball tickets, concert tickets, show tickets, whatever it might be with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And as he's done before, Eli Drinkwitz yesterday reminded us of his 5 requirements to play the quarterback position at Missouri. These are the 5 things he evaluates. He and his staff evaluate the most: toughness, preparation, decision-making, accuracy, and leadership. Now, some of that you could say is a tiny bit redundant, but instead of actually breaking down all 5 of those elements, what I thought was interesting is what he didn't say. Most specifically, he didn't talk about arm strength or arm talent. He didn't say, well, you have to have the best arm on the entire team, which, by the way, seems like something that Sam Horn has in spades. Not to say that he doesn't have toughness, decision-making, accuracy, leadership, or preparation. I'm just simply saying I did find that interesting, that that's not the number 1 or even number 2, 3, 4, or 5 thing that Drinkwitz or his staff looks for in a quarterback. I'll just say from my perspective, obviously, all things being equal, you'd love to have the strongest arm you possibly can, but I think really it's more about just having a bare minimum of arm strength that is required to play the position at the SEC level. Everything above that is kind of just a bonus. And I think so often fans lose sight of what is important at the position. And then there's another set of fans that I think is so hypercritical that they lose sight of what is important at the quarterback position. I saw a comment recently that, well, it kind of got my goat a little bit. Somebody said, boy, Brady Cook really struggled with pressure in his face at times. First of all, I love the "at times." I really struggled with pressure in his face. Well, no freaking kidding. That gives him something in common with every quarterback who's ever played in the history of the game. Have you ever played darts or cornhole or washers or something like that? You know what makes it more difficult? Some fat dude trying to jump into your face. I would totally agree that would affect my accuracy on trying to get the beanbag into the cornhole. There is no question about that. And seriously, folks, even if you look at Patrick Mahomes, who is maybe statistically, at least some years he has been, I haven't looked at the last couple, but a few years ago he was basically the greatest quarterback against pressure of all time, or certainly against the blitz. But that is because he's so good at evading the pressure and then the arm strength and arm talent that he has to get rid of the ball under pressure. I promise you, even Peyton Manning, even Tom Brady, even Patrick Mahomes, even Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, whoever it might be, if Aaron Donald is coming through the A-gap, it's going to be a problem. So this idea that, well, Brady Cook really struggled with pressure in his face at times, no freaking kidding. And yes, obviously the greats of all time are better with handling pressure than others. There's no doubt about that. But I'm just telling you, if we're talking about college football, even in the SEC, yeah, keep them upright. Keep pressure off of them. That will make them, every single one of these guys, a lot more effective. That is why guys like Kirby Moore, the offensive coordinators, try to get those guys out of those positions as many as possible, as much as they possibly can, I should say. That's why I've been emphasizing that so often guys are asked to play point guard instead of quarterback. In other words, you're asked to, hey, get the ball to this guy on a screen quickly. In other words, before the ball is even snapped, you know where the ball is going to go. Nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying what separates the good from the greats is that ability to play quarterback. In other words, it's 3rd and 8. You got to drop back. You got to set the cover. You got to set the protection, read the defense, maybe get into a different play, by the way, as well. Scramble at the right moment. Those are all the things that separate the goods from the greats. I'm just telling you, nobody is great with pressure in their face. So I probably focused on that one comment a little bit too much. It's just one of those things where I see some fans just think that being hypercritical of every single quarterback who is not one of the current greats, like Lamar or Patrick or Joe Burrow or Josh Allen, that, hey, well, I guess everybody else sucks then. Well, fantastic, but what real value does that particular opinion offer? So, again, thanks for sticking with me here through a bit of a pet peeve rant here, and thanks for making Locked On Mizzou your first listen today. For your second listen, check out The Portal Show. Brian Smith, my guy, the Scoutmaster, he's got you covered with the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Find The Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to audio podcasts. So until next time, I'm John Miller. This has been Locked On Mizzou.